Hey guys, this is Falcon the Dino, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to use every monster in Monsters of Etheria for PvP, eventually. Because you can't possibly fit how to use every monster in a single video. There are like over 70 max monsters. Anyhow, you can check out the timestamps to find the monster that you main, but I highly suggest you watch the whole thing as... First off, you can figure out how to counter everything, and second of all, you might find something new that you like to use. So without further ado, let's start with the first 5 monsters of Monsters of Etheria. Okay, I'll admit it. This is a hard monster to pick up and like. Gaiarth essentially has 2 modes to it: reckless offense or careful defense. Gaiarth does best against anything that can only deal damage at close range. It can camp those opponents out with Razor Leaf and can stack up some rock polishes to dodge close range moves. In general, Gaiarth hates anything faster of it. It can be like a couple of numbers above, but if it's noticeably faster, you are going to have issues. It can handle things like Golven, but it can struggle with Tesline, which is much faster. Earthquake, anything that gets close if you're able to hit it. Earthquake does a high amount of damage. Be careful though. Earthquake can easily be baited and punished. So and it has a high cooldown, so you want to be careful about that. You're going to want to save Explosion for if the opponent is going to kill you with their next rush. Basically, if there's no point in keeping the monster alive and you think you could get a kill out of it. You'll want to deal chip damage through Razor Leaf by staying away from the opponent and spamming it, essentially. You're going to have to expect long and boring matches with this monster, unfortunately. If the opponent has ranged attacks, on the other hand, it can easily... cause you a lot of trouble since it can spam them and avoid you. So you're going to need to switch up your strategy. If this happens, try your hardest to get in some rock polishes so you're at least around 1 boost over the opponent's speed, or at least maximum speed of Gaiarth. Then use anything in your arsenal to try to land an explosion once the opponent is low HP. Gaiarth is a hard Etherean to even use, let alone dominate with. Don't be disappointed if it's not for you. Avoid any situations where the opponent is a wind type or has hover. Earthquake is basically your only way in many situations to avoid recklessly rushing the opponent with Explosion. Gaiarth prefers defense. If you want to beat a Gaiarth, it's best to keep your distance, focus on dodging Razor Leaf, and working to win the long game. Speaking of the long game, some sets run Rest to try to beat out the opponent's DPS. So basically, if they can't deal more damage to you than you are to them, and you're healing HP, then you're basically guaranteed to win. However, I doubt that. I'm not the biggest fan of it. I prefer just using speed and stuff. And that was an explosion. So, okay, this Etherean is called Magmantle. It's the fire starter of this game. This monster is rather odd, unfortunately, in terms of playstyle. The best way to describe it is a mid-range Etherean, which can do any mid-range or close-range playstyle, but only mediocrely. Or rather, a junk drawer of broken-down strategies that may not work depending on the scenario. It has good speed and dashes for rushes, but it doesn't have any melee attacks to follow through with, like Lava Plume. So whenever you rush an opponent, typically you combine it with something else to basically the point of rushing towards the opponent with a dash is to hit another move, but this monster doesn't really have any other moves to hit other than like Astonish, so it struggles with that. Flamethrower is amazing for offense or defense, no matter which Etherean you're using, but all of Magmantle's other ranged moves are sort of iffy. They aren't exactly that usable or spammable. So sometimes Flamethrower can't be spammed and must be held on to for the right moment. Now this isn't necessarily bad. In fact, spamming can be a bad thing sometimes, but having a spam option would be really helpful for Magmantle, as it would complement a defensive playstyle and an offensive playstyle. Some players focus on landing Astonishes for flinches, while others try to use Astonish as a walling technique for landing Flamethrower. Both strategies are inconsistent, but are okay. In terms of weaknesses, this monster doesn't really have any other than cooldown issues. You can try to counter predictability, but not every user of it is predictable. It's not really that much of a threat, though, so I wouldn't worry too much about it unless the opponent mains it. Okay, time for our first actually decent Etherean. No offense, Magmantle and Gaiarth fans. Detoadnate's biggest thing is that it can make devastating traps and walls. That is, you can bubble beam the opponent into a wall, so like strafe back and forth, sideways, left and right, which causes a difficult wall to pass. The opponent can't run towards it and can struggle to dodge to the side. Once you do that, you use Water Gun to hold off any escape routes, and then you Hydro Pump where you think the opponent will be. All parts of the traps will hurt big time. The opponent also can't really rush you during these traps because of Bubble Beam's length of how long the move lasts. Unfortunately, this whole thing breaks apart if you're a mobile player like me, so I can't actually show you footage. I'm sorry. There are really cool traps that you can do with this Etherean. I'd show you if I could, but I am literally incapable of doing it because of being mobile. Bubble Beam can work on mobile. I'm actually using it right now. If you know the strategy for activating it. But it's not really that great since you can't really combo with it. I mean, you could use Rain Dance to boost an opportunistic Detoadnate with Water Gun and Hydro Pump. Those are decent moves. It's just that it's just not as great as a trap Detoadnate. Anyhow, I wouldn't personally run Self-Destruct, although that is an option. Detoadnate can kind of suffer from being predictable. You go offense and defense with it based on Hydro Pump's cooldown. You wait for Hydro Pump to recharge, and then you make a charge of your own. The thing about predictability in this game, though, is that it doesn't actually matter if the opponent is predictable. That's sort of weird to say, but the only thing that really matters is if someone can exploit that predictability, which is not really the case for Detoadnate. I say not really because this is a concept more about the player than the monster, but it can be hard to punish a really good Detoadnate after it tries to trap you because it still has access to Bubble Beam and Water Gun while waiting on its Hydro Pump. Anyhow, in terms of weaknesses, Detoadnate doesn't have that many, although Solar Beam can deal major damage against it. Water Cycle can mess with it a bit, but a person could theoretically run Cursed Chest to avoid that. Cursed Chest is an event item that changes your water moves to the ghost type, effectively avoiding any sponging going on with Water Cycle. Also, Psybeam is really good against it since it's a poison type. It doesn't really have any weaknesses in playstyle. You just need to find patterns the opponent makes themselves, which I'm sure you guys love to hear. I'm just kidding. I know for a fact that when it comes down to competitive, I know people prefer it when people tell them exactly how to do things, but this is definitely a harder situation. Okay, this is Broxl. It's an absolutely amazing monster. I kind of suck with it, though, so I apologize for the terrible game footage. This monster has a whole bunch of sets that align with it. the reason you can in competitive, if a monster has a whole bunch of sets that can work with it, it's usually at least high A tier because it just has so much potential. Some people run Astonished Copycat for more balanced Broxl, but it's probably better to be hyper offensive. I prefer the Astonish, probably because I don't main Broxl, but yeah. So the probably the best set is a dash, two melees, those are punch moves, and Copycat. Celebrate also works, but according to a Celebrate user who watched my video insulting Celebrate on my 53 sub special, I am a fool who knows nothing about the move or the strategies involved with it, so I'm not qualified to tell you anything about it. Anyhow, Broxl is simple but highly effective. Its DPS, damage per second, is so high that it can afford to be reckless and not suffer the consequences, since the fighting type moves that would normally heavily hurt Broxl are underrepresented by moves. It can use double dashes with Copycat and a dash, so at any point a Broxl could reach you in on the arena if it wanted to and was willing to expend both a dash and a Copycat. If you're fighting one, keep your distance. Use any ranged move to your advantage and don't get baited. Try to memorize Broxl's cooldown times and track which moves it can use at a given point. The mixed monster would probably do well against it, as it can give you more opportunities to counterattack against Broxl. Tank also might work, but would have to have high DPS. Okay, last Etherean of the video. This last one is Swinance. This monster is unique, as its playstyle is all about maintaining pressure with nothing but 3 dashes and a ranged attack. If you want to do well with it, you need some practice to know the right opportunity to play mid-range or close range. When are the right opportunities? It depends. If the opponent can deal a bunch of damage close range, it's probably better to stay in mid-range and spam Bullet Seed. This is what I'm doing against this Paladin. On the other hand, if you think your opponent is likely going to hit you and dodge Bullet Seed in the process, basically have a higher DPS, it's probably a time to try to hit dashes. Swinance can deal a bunch of damage in either of those strategies, but it can only do this if you're in control of the match. Don't be afraid to expend a dash or two to show that you could end a match at any time if you wanted to and you were lucky. Giga Impact is to be solely used as a finishing blow. The cooldown is too long and too risky to connect into other dashes, so I wouldn't suggest using it to simply get closer to the opponent or to dodge. Unfortunately, Swinance can struggle against opponents who can dodge well and have a ranged attack to punish with, which is basically like half the game. If you have a super effective move against Swinance, don't be afraid to punish with it. It's a big tank and it really thrives off of its high HP to be able to do risky strategies. Once you remove that aspect, Swinance becomes nothing but a punching bag that can only deal damage at close to mid-range. And it's kind of forced to play defense, which Swinance is not all that great in. The only way it can play defense is by threatening the opponent. And if the opponent doesn't feel threatened, that's the end for Swinance. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. This is going to be a series that I'm going to do. I apologize for my terrible upload schedule. If you liked the video, please consider subscribing. It took me a lot of time to make this, and if you aren't going to subscribe, well, you're going to have as much constipation as my Roblox avatar is. Have a nice day.